In discussions about the difference between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, attention is often drawn to some of the large changes to gameplay, such as the ability to stick objects together or rewind time. But with your permission, I'd like to take a look at some of the quiet differences between these two games and focus on the sound design instead. So join me and let's start the tour. Hyrule is a beautiful world, filled with towering lush green trees, thick scrubs and dense bushes. So let's take a look at how Link interacts with this foliage. That small rustle that plays as Link glides through the dense branches of the tree or as he pushes through the leaves of the bushes makes a huge difference here. The addition of this sound in Tears of the Kingdom makes the decision of the player to walk through the foliage feel much more tactile, as the environment is giving auditory feedback to match these actions, which adds an extra layer of depth to the depiction of nature that this sound design is constructing. While we're on the topic of nature, let's take a look at some of the inhabitants of this natural world and look at the animals of Hyrule. Studying how animals sound in Tears of the Kingdom is an example of a really quite subtle difference compared to Breath of the Wild. It might have even been challenging to notice the difference in those clips, but I assure you there is a difference. So first let's look at the boar. The boar snorts and then stomps the ground with its hoof. In Breath of the Wild, there is no sound to accompany the action of hoofing the ground. Whereas in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a very quiet little sound of the boar's hoof impacting with the earth. Let's take another look at the clip. Subtle, right? Now let's take another look at the pigeon clip and pay close attention to how the sound of the pigeon cooing echoes in the space. Notice how there's more reverb and echo on the pigeon's call. Both of these small little sounds are great examples of the small ways that Tears of the Kingdom makes a multitude of tiny tweaks that add up to create a very layered soundscape and make the depiction of Hyrule even more alive. Funnily enough, when I was recording for this discussion about animals in Hyrule, I was looking for some birds in the surrounding trees, and I actually happened to notice that a bird's egg had rolled down the branch of the tree and out of the nest. So I moved the egg back into the nest with its sibling. Reflecting on it now, it really speaks volumes to how effective of a world the team at Nintendo were able to construct. That I take the time to fix a nest in a video game in this virtual world they've constructed. Anyway, moving on. The glider is one of the most important tools in both of these games, a sailcloth that allows Link to safely soar down from dangerous heights. As this item is used so much and in so many different situations, let's take a look to see how the glider sounds in both of these games and how it interacts with different weather. Just listen to that difference. Now this is a clear improvement on Breath of the Wild. The way in which the rain bounces off the fabric or the wind flows through the glider adds an extra layer of immersion to the sound design being established by the weather. The sound of the rain on the glider in Tears of the Kingdom reminds me of the sound of rain on the roof when you are indoors in Minecraft. Let's keep chatting about rain while we talk about the differences between different weather effects in both of these games. Extreme cold, extreme heat and storms. All of these weather conditions are similar in their core design, but are noticeably different in the way that the spatial audio and reverb is working to create them. Take the rain for example. In Breath of the Wild, we can mostly just hear the rain on Link, almost like the sound is just playing at or around his feet in a small circle. But in Tears of the Kingdom, the rain is coming from all around Link, the water droplets bouncing off all the different surfaces around him. Or if we take the lava flowing, the extra reverb added to the sound makes it more menacing, even if it doesn't appear to be as molten red as the lava river in Breath of the Wild. Overall, the weather is one of those quiet differences in which the way the sound is created or played to the player in Tears of the Kingdom is different, even if the sound itself is very similar. A new addition in Tears of the Kingdom was the Sky Islands, which pushed the limits of the highest points in Breath of the Wild even further upwards. So let's take a listen to how the sky sounds different when standing on the peak of the sky towers in each of these games. This is another of those sounds that is not unusual to have improved, but is interesting to look into regardless. As Tears of the Kingdom explores more of the sky, it is natural for more wind-related noise to be required, so new recordings for wind would need to be done, and more consideration would have to be put into how different altitudes would realistically affect the sound. Now let's come back to the ground and get down into the mud. In Breath of the Wild, there would occasionally be these bubbling pits of mud that Link would sink into if he tried to wade through the thick, viscous liquid. This is one of those odd sounds that stuck out to me as interesting during my playthrough, so when I was recording for this video, I wanted to see if Tears of the Kingdom did anything to change it. Let's take a listen side by side. Funnily enough, it's actually quite easy to tell the difference between these two. The mud pit in Breath of the Wild sounds more watery, however that very same mud pit in Tears of the Kingdom sounds thicker, viscous and more bubbly. Another silly little sound that I wanted to check out when comparing the sound design between these two games was the crashing of a large boulder tumbling down a hill. Interestingly, this seems to be a case where the sound has been completely re-recorded for Tears of the Kingdom, and the new sound is a far better fit. The recording in Breath of the Wild sounds quite generic, stilted, almost just like a large nondescript object hitting the ground. But in Tears of the Kingdom, this really sounds like a boulder, especially in the way that it rolls and tumbles down the hill. Lastly, let's turn our attention to Link himself. How has Link's walking foley changed? Take a listen to a standard walk sound in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The sound of Link's boot on stone reverbs more in the space, creating a more realistic echo, and the recording features a much more accurate walk cycle as we hear the heel then toe of the shoe clearly connect with the stone, rather than the heel being more pronounced, like in Breath of the Wild. By taking a closer look at each of these sounds and highlighting the changes that were made to the overall sound design between the two games, hopefully you've joined me in gaining a deeper appreciation for the hard work that the Nintendo sound team put into crafting the audio identity of such a large world and making it feel so alive. If you've noticed any fun differences in the sound design, let me know in the comments.